$20,000 impact in the lifespan of a student. So ultimately, where our project reaches, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of an opportunity of $160 billion worth of economic impact that we can have through this community, this ecosystem that we built here. So tell you a little bit about the project. So we want to build an ecosystem to empower learners by providing portability and agency over their data and a vendor agnostic integration. So we have 15 organizations as part of this project moving forward. Our initial goals are to empower 3,000 teachers with their digital identity, connect them to the ecosystem, allow the right teacher to connect with the right student. And that is an incendiary remark, and I recognize that fully. So, but the goal here is that everyone on the Randa team, one of the questions that we ask whenever you come on the team is, who was your favorite teacher? Who is the most important teacher to you? And if you could not answer that question, then that we are not the right place for you, because everyone has that teacher that they can go back to. I remember 9th grade, Mrs. Baird, AP US History. She was amazing. I'll never forget her and how she taught me how to learn. So we want to support that community. We want to support people to become like a teacher like Miss Baird. And then also the mission is solving the cold start problem. So building an ecosystem, you have to have data producers, you have to have data consumers, and then you have to have the end user that does something with that data. And so we brought this community together of the data producers, ETS, Digital Promise, the data consumers, Utah, also a data producer, and then end users, the teachers within Utah. And so we're going to get to hear from each one of those community members and why this work is important, but also what is important about it to them. So why are we doing this work? Why now? Why would we jump into this right now? Well, number one is we have some key indicators from the world that we live in today. Obviously, we've had a little bit of accelerant poured on by COVID, and virtualization of teaching is now a much more widely accepted topic. But there were indicators before that. The T3 initiative through the U.S. Chamber, great work being done on digitizing credentials and digital identity. We have the U.S. Department of Ed supporting multiple blockchain meetups and a universal wallet standard. We have NASDAQ, who those in the licensure world are very familiar with. They have a renewed focus on interstate compact, and they had 4 major events last year to talk through what an interstate compact means. What does that look like to states, and what does that ultimately mean to teachers? And then the digital citizen initiatives that are popping up all over the country. So North Dakota, Colorado, Utah, Ohio, there are tremendous opportunities for users to take agency, have agency over their credentials, over their data. So I equate it a little bit to the cycle of computing over time. So we started out with large mainframes. We moved away into personal computers. Then we moved back into cloud computing. And then we're moving out into mobile devices and ultimately to a decentralized identity. And so this is the natural progression of computing as we know it from the 70s until now. So it's really fascinating to be part of such an instrumental component of what's happening in the world today. With that, I would like to pass it over to Malia Height with State of Utah to talk a little bit about their work in this project.
Thanks so much, Marty. I'm happy to be here. I am the Educator Licensing Coordinator for the State of Utah. And the picture that is here on the screen is why we are so invested in the idea and development of an educator wallet. When we were first working on the standardization and this digital version of data, I immediately thought about this file that lives in a very special, safe place in my life. This file is all of my test scores. You can see all the praxis transcripts and all of my transcripts of the universities that I've attended. And if I don't have these pieces of paper, I can't verify that I have taken any of these exams, because if you go to the next slide, Marty, this is how old these papers are. So these test scores, starting from the 19 literal hundreds, if I lose them, I can't verify with anyone that I took and passed the exams and that I'm qualified to be a teacher. I have been licensed in 4 different states, and every time I am licensed in a new state, I have to send them a copy of this, sometimes in reality, like the actual paper. Sometimes they'll let me send just a copy. But this is my gold that I hold on to that stays in a safe spot. And you'll see at the top folder was my paper application that I had to send to the state of Utah 3 years ago when I moved to the state of Utah. And it was lost for over 6 months, just on the wrong shelf in the wrong spot. And these are the reasons that we in Utah are so interested in this work and in finding ways to standardize and validate data in a reliable way that doesn't include a piece of paper that is 22 years old. So if you go to the next slide, Marty, these are really the big reasons of why we're interested in this work. And one of the things that we're working on statewide is an integrated information system for everything in education: teachers, students, and school funding. It's a $20 million project that we've been working on for a few years. And one of the goals is to do these 3 things with all of our data. We want to make sure that our data is of high quality, meaning that it's valid, that somebody didn't cut and paste on their PDF of their praxis score that they actually got a 172 instead of a 112. And we also want to have a more robust amount of data that through partners like Credential Engine, we can say, well, this is the transcript from the university and this date. And instead of just this one little line of they took a class, we can find out what actually was the full name of the class. What was the course catalog description of the class? And that gives us more information immediately available so that we can do things like validate whether or not somebody has the competencies to be a teacher. The second is this personal ownership of the data. Right now, if I want to share my educator data with anyone, I have to walk in this file that someone has to validate. And it would be so great if that data lived somewhere secure that I could push out to anybody, that they could get it and know that it's valid. Know that it's valid, not just because I say so, but because whoever it is that initiated it, like ETS with my praxis scores, says, yes, she did get this score on this date of this test. And so that ownership of that data then becomes mine. And so that is something that I think as we become a more and more digitally reliant society, who owns the data is going to be more and more important. Then the third, which is, I think, one of the things we're really looking at right now is the automation and efficiency of licensing processes within our state system. So if somebody were to share data digitally, first of all, I don't have to verify that the data is actually valid. I did a rough count, and if we have an educator come from out of state, we have to validate, like go and check data on 11 different systems in order to make sure that what the teacher, the educator has told us is real, is valid. Whether that's checking NASTEC to make sure that their license in another state wasn't revoked, to make sure that their ETS score is accurate, that their program was accredited. There are all of these things that we have to check, versus if it came in an educator wallet and I already knew it was valid, then I could say, oh, they have a degree, they have a license, they taught for 3 years under that license, they have met our requirements in Utah, and we can automate the awarding of licenses as long as we have valid data that we can plug into our system. Additionally, this means cost savings. I was, as an overachiever, I went to 5 different universities. And so every time I went to a new state to be licensed, I had to provide transcripts, official transcripts for 5 universities. And they're between $20 and $35 a piece. And so that ends up being a lot of money. And when you are a brand new teacher, for $200 or $300 for transcripts gets costly. And I think that in that way and in the portability, I think we can address things of equity for our teachers. We can eliminate barriers for teachers to be portable and move. Somebody had mentioned that in the chat about student records because of portability. We can also eliminate the cost that is there, so that if they want to move somewhere else, but they can't afford to move their license, then this really is a way to provide an equitable foundation to allow teachers to teach where they want to be or where they need to be. So I'm really excited for this work. It is personally exciting for me to not have to guard this paper file from 1999. And I'm excited to see where this work can take us.
Awesome. Thank you, Malia. And thank you to the state of Utah for believing in the project and believing so much that you signed on and are actively, supporting this work. We truly appreciate that drive forward. Next, I'd like to bring to the table Odelia Young with Digital Promise, and why this work matters in the world of digital promise and their huge reach with micro-credentials. Odelia?
Thanks, Marty. There are a few things that I would turn my camera on because I'm very much an off-camera person, but this is one of them. Very excited about this project, and it's really honored to be part of what we're putting together in this Lifelong Learner project because at Digital Promise, we have a platform. It's like a leading platform for K-12 credentialing, and we've always done our work as an ecosystem. So it isn't just about what can Digital Promise do by ourselves, but how are we creating frameworks and how are we creating quality assurance around micro-credentials so that teachers and school districts who are pursuing micro-credentials and other credentials feel very sure that this is a secure system that is worth it to pursue credentials. And all of that data is going to be secure and they can share it. Like none of our information is proprietary to our system. We're always awarding micro-credentials as open badges. And so on our platform, we have over 550 micro-credentials with over 65 issuing partners. And we have tens of thousands of users from all across the country and the world. My last trip before things shut down was to Thailand and some universities there. And same thing that we're seeing in teachers, whether it's in the US or outside the US, that they are eager to find ways to learn and they're intrinsically motivated to learn. But that extrinsic part about what they can do with their learning is also what they're interested in. Once I obtain this credential, what do I do with it? And it's really exciting to see people want to learn, engaging with credentials, something new. But to create a system that develops value and incentives for earning it is something that is critical to the work we do, and important for all of us on this call to be thinking about what are we making possible for teachers to do. We don't need to do anything with them. Like they already know what they want to do, the kind of stories they want to tell, but we need to be designing a system that allows them to be able to have that agency with it. So Teacher Wallet is allowing Digital Promise's existing ecosystem to be an ecosystem within a larger ecosystem and do something a little bit greater because we know that our credentials are just one part of a larger story that we want teachers to be talking about. And so some other reasons that the Lifelong Learner Project and the Teacher Data Agency is important for our work at Digital Promise is that, like I said before, credentials are part of a larger story of what teachers can do. So, you know, when I was a teacher, someone might pop into my room for 5 minutes and like write a whole evaluation for me as if they've, you know, known me for 2 years. And the credentials are able to tell a deeper story of how is someone moving along in their career. When we started our work with micro-credentials at Digital Promise, we started it with the knowing that, like, how are we recognizing teachers who are meeting the real-time demands of a 21st century classroom? We know that because things, technology, everything is shifting all the time, teachers are always going to their classroom and they're making changes, and they're making changes based on data, their students' needs, they're learning things based on their interests. So just being able to give teachers the ability to tell that story about what they're doing throughout the trajectory from when they first enter the classroom to when they're, you know, in the classroom for several years and when they're veteran teachers, really powerful, because even, you know, 12, 15 years down the road, they're still gaining new skills. And teachers need the ability to like own that area. There's so much, when I talk to the other partners on this team, there's lots that's being done to teachers all the time, shifting policies that they don't really have a say in, they're not always invited to the table. So to give them ownership over what they can control, which is what doing in their classroom with their students, what they're learning, is going to be very powerful for them to feel that they are being empowered to take ownership over that piece of their work when so much is out of their control. And Teacher Wallet is helping us to put teachers in the driver's seat of their learning. And that used to be our tagline when we first started our work about 7 years ago at Digital Promises. How are we putting teachers into the driver's seat of their own learning? Because all learners, we know best what it is that we are pursuing. So it's going to increase what teachers can do with their learning and increase those stories that they're able to tell. And we're really excited that our credentials that are already a snapshot into a new skill can be part of what teachers can then take and say, I'm someone who's been growing in data literacy. Look at all these credentials that I have in this area to tell a greater story about new opportunities and career advancements they'd like to take advantage of.
Awesome. Thank you, Adelia. Really appreciate the partnership with Digital Promise. And so much of this is just early movers and early believers in this marketplace. And one of those being ETS, and really, the beginning of the teacher life cycle begins with the praxis test. And so it was important for us to work with the praxis team to help establish those teachers early on in their life cycle, to understand that they have agency over this data. And so I'd like to welcome Jason Carter with ETS to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Marty. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Good. All right. So as Marty mentioned, I'm Jason Carter. I'm the executive director for the ETS Professional Educator Programs. ETS is a nonprofit research-based organization. And the Praxis program is used by 40 states and territories. I'll also add to, my wife is a 8th grade special ed teacher. So Marty, she's my favorite teacher.
Awesome.
Being her my daughters, I've learned a lot, and she's got her Praxis documents over here as well. So part of what we do, I think, organizationally at ETS as a nonprofit organization is work with our candidates and our partners to figure out how we can add more value, and to have that input every step of the way so that we're listening.
I'm going over.
every step of the way, to see where we can add value and work with our partners as well. So working with Marty and Kimberly, is really been a great experience. And a great opportunity for us to learn from you guys as well. Next slide. So, in terms of why the Lifelong Learner Project is valuable for us, as I mentioned, as a mission-based organization, it gives us an opportunity to add more value for individuals, for states, for districts, help teachers to know more about themselves and find opportunities. And from the district's perspective, to really understand trends and create opportunities for teachers. I know Kimberly and I were talking last week, and one of the things we were joking about is there's all these different surveys and different things on Facebook where you can learn like what type of fish you would be or something like that, right? Like, how do we create opportunities for people to add value in meaningful ways, to know more about themselves and where the opportunities are, that they can, like Marty said, create that right match. So we're happy to be a part of this, and looking forward to see what else we can do.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. So we've talked a lot about the ecosystem. So here it is. Here is how the ecosystem is kind of tying together. And for those of you that know me, I've shown you this image quite a lot. But we believe that there's a lot of entry points for a teacher to begin their digital identity journey. And so we really tried hard to imagine beyond today where those entry points are. And so we have considered, alternative pathways, non-traditional ed prep programs, university instructors as part of the program. So praxis preparation programs is an important entry point. Ed prep programs traditionally, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs is part of the program. And then you've heard from our other partners, ATS with the praxis exam, State of Utah with licensing and endorsements and efficacy, and Digital Promise with professional learning badges and micro credentials. So it really takes a village to make something like this happen, like a true ecosystem approach. And then we have our infrastructure partners. So we didn't choose, from a blockchain approach. And for those of you that I'm sure, because you're on this call, you probably have heard the term blockchain before, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. But there are best uses of different chain technologies. And so what we did was we brought those best of breed technologies to bear on this effort. And ultimately that is driving interoperability, driving all of this to support not only teachers within state of Utah, but also other states, state of Colorado, and North Dakota, and some of these other states that are leaning into this idea of digital agency and digital identity. And so I mentioned the best use of technology. And so this is where our infrastructure partners, interconnect with that teacher wallet. So we live in a world of swim lanes. Our world is 100% swim lanes because we're always partnering with someone. We're always driving this kind of ecosystem first. So you see, we have, Evernym, ID Ramp, Velocity, all those are kind of within that wallet transaction layer. So getting data from the teacher wallet into a wallet. Then we have Blockframe that has a very, very efficient, very dynamic chain architecture. And so being able to leverage that architecture for logging assertions, auditing, and tracking that audit log through the life cycle of these things for verifiability and for, even deeper insights as we kind of build on the ecosystem of data. And then finally, Flurry, they have, their semantic web architecture and their GraphDB is really built to build metadata interconnects between data dynamically. So at Rando, we build AI engines, and we do that work. And so to being able to leverage a dynamically expandable dynamic architecture within the chain architecture is critical for deriving insights for those teachers. So as a teacher, I put all my data in this wallet, I have agency over it. That's great. What else? What else is there for me? And ultimately we can say, a teacher like you also takes this praxis exam. And oh, by the way, there's 3 positions that are new opportunities for you. That's really interesting, right? And so we kind of try to continually build on the ecosystem to develop not only professionally for the teachers, but also to give them opportunities, breaking down these 4 walls of schools and saying, rural communities, you may need a biology teacher, but you may only need, 1 hour of that AP biology teacher just because of your population. So if as a rural AP biology teacher, I can teach in 10 schools, that's really exciting for me because ultimately great teachers want to teach more students. That's what they want, to impact students' growth over time. And that's what we hope to ultimately be able to deliver on this. I want to recognize our identity establishment partners. So we're locations where teachers establish this identity. So we all have to recognize that we establish multiple identities throughout our world. Facebook makes you use your real name, but ultimately they figure out who you really are. So we have Digital Promise, leader in micro-credentialing of teachers, ETS, obviously a critical entry point for educators in 40 states, university instructors, and helping teachers to get over the hump and get that career started or extend that career into something new. The state of Utah obviously driving adoption within the state there and leading the way in this work. And then the University of Colorado Springs, kind of taking a step back into the ed prep earlier in the life cycle of the teacher. This is a best practice. Establish your digital identity. Establish how you do your management of your credentials. All these points of opportunity to build on that establishment. Then we have our infrastructure partners. Obviously, Rand has done a lot of work around teachers. Crocus is another entity that has worked closely with the teacher prep data model work with EdFi and really has a deep knowledge of how ed prep programs on the ground integrate with districts and ultimately how that leads to integration with states. And so we're really proud to have them as part of this architecture so that we can drive, again, deeper into that ed prep architecture. And then Blockframe and Flurry that I mentioned earlier. And then the wallet integrations, Evernym, I'm going to show you their wallet here in a few minutes. And then ID Ramp as well, that has not only worked into the blockchain world, but also a leader in SSO, and then Velocity Network, really establishing that network of international data systems. And then standards, it's impossible to do this work without standards. And so we have leveraged the IMS Global CLR standard, the Comprehensive Learner Record standard, in multiple ways to approach credentials here. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of how that used, and really think about it not from a record standpoint, not from a comprehensive learner record standpoint, but from a data transport standard. This is how we move credentials from place to place. This is how we consistently do that in a way that systems understand how to consume it. And then obviously Credential Engine, they are building a large architecture of defining credentials and some of that interconnectivity, some of that interrelatedness of those data. And we'll get into a little bit of that in a minute. So what have we accomplished so far? I'm going to show you. We have built credentials around the ETS Praxis Score. We've built a credential around a Digital Promise Open Badge, a transcript, and a teacher license. We've built a web wallet to stage those credentials and a mobile UI to publish those credentials to a blockchain-based wallet. So we've done a lot of work already. There's still a lot to do. Just to step back a minute into the social equity aspect of this, technology is often a barrier to entry for a lot of the population. And so we are very conscious of that. And hopefully we are thinking about it the right way to extend it in certain areas. And so ETS is highly invested in diversity, equity, inclusion. They've got some great articles. If you look up, one of the major drivers for Wyatt Gordon that Jason has stepped in his role as Wyatt moves on to something else, but supporting and developing and retaining Black male educators, a huge focus for ETS. We follow that, right? Digital Promise, leading equity conversations. Odelia, if you email her, she has the greatest reply ever, which is, I'm hyper-focused on equity and inclusion, and I'll get back to you when I can. It's amazing. I was just like, that is fantastic. Well done. And so there's a little bit about them. And then the rural education, as I mentioned before, extending, as a simple example, AP biology into rural districts where they can't, maybe they can't afford a full-time AP biology teacher, but they do have students that would benefit from that. And so we're leaning into the leadership being provided by members of the group. As I mentioned earlier, it takes a village to do this work, and we don't know it all. And so we say, there's really smart people in the room. We should follow them. And so that's how we think about the social equity approach. And then user engagement and education. So we're going to launch the LLP blog, promoting all the partners and leveraging those expertise, develop videos educating the marketplace on the value of the project. And then my little Easter egg. So we're going to launch an NFT. And this is going to provide an item of value to the teachers who adopt the platform. So this is a little bit forward thinking, but at the end of the day, what it is you have the idea of social capital and the idea of fiscal capital. And social capital comes in many different forms. Part of that social capital is agency over your data. That's social capital. But part of the social capital is visibility. And so if you read anything about NFT or non-fungible tokens, it's a big deal in the art world. But what we're doing is we're saying, hey, we're as a teacher that adopts the platform, we're going to give you an NFT representing part of that platform. And I'll show you what that looks like. And really driving forward what can be an asset for that teacher in the future. Separate from their credentials, they have this non-fungible asset that said, I did this thing. And that has fiscal value in and of itself. So I'm really excited about that. I was on a thread earlier today with a bunch of blockchain expertise, and somebody mentioned, hey, we should make an NFT and sell that for the social capital that it drives forward in the work. So very excited about that. So let's see it. As most people know on this call, I love to just demo brand new software out of the gate. So here we're gonna do that. So this is the teacher web wallet. So I've already loaded my credentials because that does take a minute, but I'm just going to show you a little bit of how those are represented here. So I've got my professional educator license from Utah. So I'm going to look at the details of that. It's built as a verifiable credential. What does that mean? It means it has a token signature attached to the credential. I can verify it here. I can verify it as a receiver. So I share this credential with somebody, they can go on, they can verify it. And I can verify everything about it. I can verify that it is a professional educator license. I can even verify the evidence that is my license. So this is an important concept, right? It's meeting the market where it's at. People still need the idea of paper. They just don't need paper. And so what we've done is we've done a really interesting piece where we've wrapped this in a base 64 encoded object inside JSON, which is, for all the nerds, love that. But what it really means is that it all comes as one thing. We're not putting this in a Google Drive. We're not putting it in SharePoint. It goes from the web wallet to the mobile wallet, period. It doesn't go anywhere else. It's simple, straightforward. So I can verify endorsements within that credential. So my area of concentration, school leadership, I can verify that. I can verify my elementary educational technology professional. So we have kind of a belt and suspenders approach to all this to make sure that however you want to verify it, however you want to try to see it, we're doing that for you. So that's a little bit on the license. And much the same with the digital promise badge, although there's a little bit of extension with the digital promise badge. So same kind of architecture here. We can verify that it is a digital promise badge. We have the details, the narrative attached with that badge. And then we've actually credit to Nate Otto and to Credential Engine. They worked hard to get this ready so that we can actually see the alignment of that credential with Credential Engine. So we have that embedded in Credential Engine now. So they have this deep layer of understanding of how those credentials might be attached, other credentials might be attached to this, and a rich set of data behind that credential. So we're super excited to be able to share that from the Credential Engine side, and we hope to all the other credentials we will be publishing back to the Credential Engine as well. And then finally, finally, most importantly, the beginning, which is ETS, those test scores. So again, they're verifiable via electronic signature, and each of the assertions in each content area for this exam, the date that it was completed, the results that are attached, and these are then deliverable to Utah so that they can then say, yes, this cumulative score works for us. So super high level, but we're really excited about where we've gotten to today. And then I wanted to just share a little bit deeper dive into the account itself. So we actually have the ability to attach to an existing ETS ID so that whenever you test with ETS, those credentials come directly to your wallet once that relationship is established. We also have two-factor authentication, and also to just comply with GDPR, you can pull your personal data whenever you need to. So we're checking boxes left and right. So that's great. It seems like a centralized system. You're right. It is. It's a centralized web-based system. But what we can do from there is then we connect that with a mobile wallet. So what I can't show you today is the teacher wallet itself, but I can show you how it connects to a mobile wallet. And I got to do one quick thing here. If it pops up on the right screen, I'm winning. See how big it is. Perfect. All right, so here's my mobile device. Here is my mobile wallet. And so what I'll do, just to kind of demonstrate the function itself, I'm going to connect my wallet. And this will be a little tricky, but I think I can make it work. So we generate a request out to the chain to connect the wallet. And as you can see, I've already connected this, so it may take a minute here. But while it's doing that, I'll go ahead and show you, here's my teacher wallet connection and all the credentials that I've loaded into this mobile wallet. So, but how do I do that? How do I make that connection? It's pretty simple. I pull up my phone, I scan a QR code. It says, hey, connect with teacher wallet. And I say, yep, let's do that. And then from there, I can send credentials verifiably between my web wallet and my mobile wallet. So I hit send credential. I have my transcript. I've got my test taker results. I've got the digital promise badge. I've got the educator license. So I'll send that educator license to my wallet. And what we're doing here, we use the mobile SDK from Evernym as a current backend for our teacher wallet architecture. But I'll get prompted. So the process is very similar. The UI is very different, but I'll get prompted as a user to say, hey, you've got a credential offer from the teacher wallet. Do you want to accept the credential? So I'll accept that credential. It'll verify biometrically. And then I get both a machine readable transcript and the PDF object, or my license in this case. Our labels are a little off because, as Kimberly mentioned, it's 17-minute-old software. What are you going to do? But at the end of the day, I can view those credentials here. So there's my digital promise badge. Let's see if I can find. Here's my CLR of my license, and there's my actual license. So we've done the thing, right? We've got it to a mobile wallet. We've actually leveraged blockchain to do, a very important task, which is securely and verifiably deliver data to a mobile device. And and really create data agency. So that's the wallet. Just a little bit on the NFT. So this is OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace. And we've created a Lifelong Learner project out there. And so we've created these NFT objects. So NFT objects can be whatever you want them to be. But at the end of the day, as you can note, these are actually part of the Lifelong Learner project. So it's kind of a little bit of a play on something from about 2001 maybe, or 1999, where the guy sold individual pixels of his website and made $1 million or something like that. But we're doing this more for the agency of the teacher. So each one of these is embedded right here. So you actually own part of this through that NFT. And I think that's really fascinating. And here's the contract that supports the transaction itself on either scan. It's legit, it's real. So very excited to drive forward kind of the community value of this and the social capital that can exist for teachers through this project. Let's see, and then coming back to our presentation. Sorry, I kind of did the big thing right in the middle there. Let me get to the end. So next steps, we've got to complete integrations. We've got to finalize our mobile teacher wallet, test with users, and most importantly, iterate. So we have to continue to learn. We do not build castles. We're not in that business. We don't know how to do it because they're not useful. They're just big behemoths that are very drafty and wind just blows through them. So what we've done is we built a nice table and chairs. We can sit at that table and chairs now. That's we get a credential, we deliver it to a mobile wallet. The next step is, what do teachers think about that? How do teachers use that? What does that mean to them? How do they need to interact with it? And so that's where we go next. So questions, Kimberly?
Yes. First of all, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them. We've already gotten a couple that I definitely want to address. The first one that came in is a really good one, and I think there are a few folks that might be able to address it. Sometimes assessment companies don't keep records of assessments after a certain period of time. Would this system connect to the database and the data would then be erased and they'd never have then when they delete the record, it would be gone? Or does this record stay for forever, even after the testing company deletes it?
Yep, great question. So a big part of kind of the idea of blockchain is it is immutable, right? So once you write something on the blockchain, it literally never goes away. It can be revoked, which means that somebody intentionally has to take it off the chain or basically mark it as revoked. They can't actually take it off the chain. They mark it as revoked. But if they do not do that, then that data exists forever, or as long as that chain lives, which based on what we know about, current blockchains and things like that, it's roughly, 50 to 100 years, somewhere like that.
Great. This one is actually from Aaliyah from Carter. Decentralized identity is absolutely the future and what we need to be pushing toward. How near term do you expect it will be for the state to realistically move away from a centralized identity approach?
So I put a very brief answer in the chat, but for part of it, we're hoping to have some tiny slice of a pilot within the next year. And then expand beyond that. We're not going to be, just because not all partners will have things published to some sort of a decentralized identity place. It doesn't exist all the way yet. So we're not going to be able to do full implementation, but we're hoping that we'll be able to use at least some of it within the next year.
Yeah, and Carter, I'll just add on to that, because this is a national conversation with a lot of different states, and a lot of different states are thinking about it but you have to move at the pace that people are somewhat comfortable conceptually with the thing. And so, whenever the iPad was introduced, we walked right out the door with a formative assessment on the iPad, took it to a district. They said, "That's great. First time we've seen that thing, and that's not what we need." Now we're doing assessment on mobile device all the time. So you have to kind of introduce these concepts, let them marinate a little bit, and then take a step forward. This is a step forward. We're focusing on teacher credentials. So that's a very impactful, critical place. But it's definitely movable versus some of the other, identity verticals that are out there.
Holly wants to know how an individual teacher would sign up to use it. Is there a cost?
So still thinking about that, actually. So our foundation is, we think that $30 per year for a teacher is not insurmountable, and it's kind of, we have to pay for the infrastructure somehow. But the nature of it is that we're hopefully providing value and portability way beyond what that number is.
Great. So Carter has a question, a follow-up about the states that he's been talking to are running into what user group use case can I start with? Oh, it's just really a comment. Thank you, Carter, that he loves that we've started with teachers. Yes, I agree, Taylor. We believe teachers are the most important leaders out there. They lead students and they lead from a career perspective. So if we can bring teachers on board, then other careers are going to follow very easily after. Taylor is asking, is the wallet owned by the end user, as in the teacher, or is it contingent on an organization maintaining a partnership with Randa? For example, can a teacher maintain access even if their state no longer engages with Randa?
Well, here's the trick, is that we don't actually contract with Utah. Utah actually has their own licensure system. So at the beginning, it's actually independent of both of us, which is a beautiful thing.
And yes, the teacher owns their wallet and owns their license and can take it from one state to another. It's theirs and their data. It really is replacing. I love the picture that Malia showed earlier. It really is. It really is replacing that file and that need to go to your mom's house and dig under your bed to try to find the diploma that you needed several years ago. Go ahead.
Well, one thing, Lance, you mentioned early on, teacher certification coach at ESC in Texas. Love your thoughts on what you've seen here.
So I really like the idea of micro credentialing, especially as it relates to our candidates marketing themselves and trying to get a job, as well as to have some sort of assurance that the work that we're doing is aligned in quality to the skills that they need. I was just kind of thinking, if there would be integration with something like LinkedIn and these micro credentials between Teacher Wallet, or I'm just trying to think about the marketability of their micro credentials, and also wondering, would we as an EPP, how would we get approval to award those micro credentials? So several.
Yeah, you got a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
I can't answer a lot of them. The one that I can answer is LinkedIn is a perfect example of just kind of an ecosystem emerging on its own. But it started with, I need somewhere for my business professional relationships to exist. And I think what we're building is the foundation for teachers to do the same. I think we're building the foundation for them to connect into maybe a new ecosystem, maybe something new that emerges because now you have this ability to do this, whereas yesterday you didn't.
Well, and I would add that because these credentials are verifiable, you know, I could tell you on LinkedIn that I'm a neuroscientist, and you'd believe me because I look like one. But here in Teacher Wallet, you can verify that statement that I have asserted about myself is true. And I think that is not just for our careers, but for so many aspects of our lives is going to become so important just as we move, you know, through time. In fact, Jim asked a question about, you know, would the wallet allow for, you know, other items to be pulled in, like a clearance, or is there, you know, other kinds of data that could be brought into the wallet?
So yes, one of the other important things that we're doing is COVID credentials, because we know that immunization and vaccines are going to be important. And so we have already produce about 8,000 test results per week through the similar process. And we've actually just demoed, was it yesterday, to the COVID credential initiative community, our platform publishing those credentials to a mobile wallet. So yes, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and that's what we're looking for here too, is what else does a teacher need in their wallet? You know, we come from licensing, we come from, you know, micro-credentialing. What else does a teacher need in their wallet? And is this the right place to do it? Do you have multiple wallets? I think all of those could be true. But the first thing is you have to show people that it's a thing. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to say, hey, look, we've actually done something. With that, let's see, Cassidy, one more.
Yeah, I was going to say Cassidy's got a great question to end on, because it's envisioning sort of the future global world, and as we are thinking about that, I think it's coming. So if you had a foreign transcript, like transcripts from other universities, and you were trying to bring them in, could you do that even if they weren't validated in the U.S., but they were validated by another body? How does that work?
So that's exactly why we've brought together international partners as well. So Velocity Network being part of this, you know, Flurry is international as well. So is Evernym. We have many international partners that are integrating outside of the U.S. I mean, Randa was at one time in 7 countries. We understand that you have to be able to cross the pond, if you will. And so that's an important concept. And we think about it often as far as, what does this credential mean whenever I take it to another place? And ultimately, that's the problem, even within the contiguous 48, is that we don't trust a university in one state versus another state. And so we're building a bridge to do that right now. And then we build a bridge across the pond. And ultimately, it's portability. And how do you believe it? How do you not... We get in a lot of conversations here where there's a lot of talk about trust. I just want you to be to a place where you can believe it. That's all you have to do is believe that it is true, and have the tools to tell you that, yes, I can confirm that it's true. Trust is a huge conversation, and we don't want to have the trust conversation, but ultimately just believe what we can do. With that, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you all so much for your contributions. Thank you for your interest and your impact in this project as we go through and learn and iterate through it. So thank you, Malia, Jason, Adelia, all the partners, much appreciated. And I greatly appreciate the input of the broader community. Thanks so much. Have a great day.